Today we're going to discuss the roadmap to animal liberation. Let's start with the big picture. Perhaps the single thing we all agree on is we want animal liberation. But what does this mean? Well, let's go through the 5 W's. The first question, why, is the easiest to answer and the hardest to face. I assume we don't have to go into detail here. Each one of us knows that non-human animals suffer horrible brutality in numbers that completely dwarf the Earth's human population. We could spend all day watching sickening footage of animals being brutalized, and then when we get up tomorrow, there would probably be another investigation revealing new horrors. A lot of people don't want to face this constant and stomach-churning cruelty. I can certainly understand this. I know that I didn't want to know anything about factory farms. I actively avoided when people would bring up the subject. Others believe the brutality inflicted on animals justifies anything, including burning anger and even hatred of meat eaters. I also understand this. Going forward, we should keep in mind this why, the overwhelming cruelty to animals and the moral imperative to end it as quickly as possible. This, and this alone, is the bottom line. While the why of animal liberation is clear, what animal liberation will entail is a topic of significant debate. For some individuals, animal liberation requires that everyone adopt their specific diet, lifestyle, and philosophy. And not just our views about animals, but about religion, politics, GMOs, smoking, alcohol, offspring, vaccines, and every other subject. Of course, part of me wants everyone to hold all my views, but this will never happen. And if I insist veganism must encompass every single one of my views, I make it significantly harder, if not impossible, for others to even consider the animal's plight. The more we insist on, the fewer individuals will help inspire to take any constructive steps to help animals. In one sense, it's instructive to consider the efforts for human liberation. While things are by no means perfect for people, we have to admit that most of us in the US currently have it better than other animals. This isn't to say we don't still have a long way to go to achieve equality for all people. This doesn't mean no one faces oppression, discrimination, or even violence. This isn't to say there's no racism, sexism, or homophobia. What we have accomplished, though, is now our society generally says these things are not acceptable. What can we learn from this? If we step back for a second, we should note that about 99% of the animals killed in the US died to be eaten. So from where we are now to a first approximation, animal liberation will be achieved when society no longer views animals as food. Not that everyone agrees with us on everything, but that animals are generally seen as individuals, not food. That each pig, chicken, cow, and turkey is rightfully seen as someone, not something. This might seem far off, but in a way, bringing about this shift in perspective could actually be easier than securing full human liberation. The vast majority of people oppose cruelty to animals. Just stop to think about that. Nearly everyone opposes cruelty to animals, far more than believe in equal marriage, or equal pay for equal work, or even racial equality. Think about it this way. There are people who will consciously discriminate against their fellow human beings. People who dedicate their lives to denying equality for other people. Ugh. Yeah, take it down. Oh, much better. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Almost no one eats meat because they actively want animals to suffer. This is one of the reasons we are mistaken when we hold up other social movements as a model for animal liberation. This brings us to the how of animal liberation. There are already hundreds of millions of people out there who share our disgust, our moral revulsion at cruelty to animals. Earlier in 2015, Gallup found that 96% of people in the US want animals to be protected from abuse. 96%. Come on, 96% of Americans don't agree on anything. In fact, there are enough people close to us to change society's norms and bring about de facto animal liberation. Think about it. The meat industry literally spends billions of dollars a year to lie to the public. Their advertising budgets alone completely and utterly dwarf all of our resources combined. And yet still, in the face of billions and billions of dollars of lies, 54% of Americans are specifically concerned about the treatment of farm animals. 54% is a landslide. 54% is game over. Now, all we have to do is convince those people to simply match their actions with their ethics. Here's one of the many mistakes I made in the past. I thought being right was enough. I thought all I had to do was point out how immoral it is to eat animals, and I was done. But of course, being right isn't enough. Resting on my perceived superiority wasn't just harmful to making progress for animals, it was downright stupid. I hadn't changed my diet simply because someone pointed out what I was doing was wrong. Instead, I evolved over time in fits and starts, even backsliding away from vegetarianism for a while. Most vegans I know also evolved over time. They didn't change because someone screamed at them. They weren't chanted into becoming vegan. They changed, like me, because our hearts and minds were slowly open to the animal's plight. Just as importantly, we slowly became convinced that we had the ability to take meaningful action. So as tempting as it is to be right, to be pure in our beliefs, what is actually important is that we are effective in getting people to start to evolve, to begin taking meaningful steps for animals. And again, in many ways, our task could be significantly easier than other social justice movements. We don't have to eradicate a lifetime of racism. We don't have to undo centuries of oppressive culture. We already have people's revulsion at cruelty to animals. We just have to get them to act according to the ethics they already have. Yes, of course, this is difficult. This can be very difficult. We have to overcome habit. We have to overcome convenience. And we have to overcome peer pressure and the desire to fit in with the crowd. But it is getting easier and easier every day. There was a great review of the restaurant Solely Vegan from someone who calls himself a carnivore all the way. Quote, "Wish they were in my neighborhood, because I'd be one happy, fat, vegan cat eating some deep fried tofu with their crazy good tartar sauce. This food is the shiznit. Not kidding." We can do this. We no longer have to settle for the attitude of do something, do anything. We no longer have to settle for advocacy practices that were popular 20 years ago. Now, we can pursue modern outreach that leverages the latest technological advances and sociological research. We can choose a psychologically sound, incremental message that will convince the most people to start making truly impactful changes and maintain those changes. These new tools and insights mean our efforts and our donations can have the biggest possible impact for animals. And just as important, we now have food that is, say it with me, the shiznit. We can't underestimate how important this is. Psychology, sociology, and marketing have proven again and again that none of us make optimal choices in every aspect of our lives. Good intentions are simply not enough. It is a straightforward fact. The easier it is for us to make compassionate choices, the fewer animals will suffer. When people can easily find delicious, familiar foods at a fair price, they will choose compassion. It really is as simple as that. Now, the specifics of how to bring about animal liberation is a huge topic in and of itself. That's why I wrote The Accidental Activist and co-wrote the Animal Activist Handbook, to share what I and my colleagues have learned over the past quarter century. If we can all avoid the many mistakes I've made in the past, animals will be much better off. Before I cover the last two topics, I want to reinforce one key lesson we should keep in mind if we want to be effective advocates. We should leave our ego at the door. I know I've said this already, but I really can't emphasize it enough. I deeply regret all my many failed opportunities to help animals, all because I couldn't keep the focus on animals and on the person with whom I was speaking. In short, we have to stay focused if we want to be effective. We can't just remain in our bubble, liking and retweeting what our fellow vegans say. We have to focus on realistic strategies that create significant and lasting change with new people in the real world. This isn't hypothetical. It's a truism that the easier it is to make compassionate choices, the more people will join us. But the converse is just as true. The harder and less attractive we make it, the fewer people will join us, and the more animals will suffer. Again, the how is covered in my books and on many websites. Now, however, I want to conclude by covering the when and who. Because of the number of individuals suffering and the horrific brutality they face, I firmly believe animal liberation is the moral imperative of our time. Looking back at the long arc of history over the millennia, I know animal liberation will come about as our ethics continue to evolve. Now, working along with the expansion of our ethics, capitalism, which brought us factory farming, will continue to squeeze the inefficiencies from food production. This will ultimately end the practice of feeding grain to animals and then just eating part of the animal. As we know, it is much more efficient and cost-effective to eat foods made directly from plants. But when de facto animal liberation will finally occur is an open question. Will it be decades? Centuries? The variable that will determine when is who. Specifically you. Specifically us. In retrospect, the expansion of our ethics seems inevitable, but it didn't just happen on its own. Countless individuals struggled and sacrificed over the centuries to bend the arc of history towards justice. Now, I know at times things can appear to be so overwhelming as to be hopeless. It is easy to feel we can't make a difference. But if there are just two things you realize, you should know this. 1, we are winning. And 2, you really can make a difference. I stopped eating animals about 30 years ago. At the time, I never dreamed of restaurants like Veggie Grill or Native Foods. I never dreamed of cruelty-free options that even hardcore carnivores like. I never dreamed of people like Al Gore and Cory Booker going vegan. I never dreamed of Bill Gates and other billionaires investing in vegan food companies while saying the future of food is vegan. For decades, I watched the number of animals killed in this country go up and up. I never dreamed that the number of animals killed would decline by hundreds of millions, even while the human population continues to increase. We've changed the world so much in the past 25 years, far more than I ever dreamed. The next 25 years could exceed our dreams even more. Of course, we are on the right side of history. But more importantly, we are stronger and much, much smarter. We are equipped with better tools and a growing dedication to optimal advocacy. And although the meat industry is ruthless to animals, we can now be just as relentless in our efforts for animals. More importantly, we are winning. It can take some perspective to see it, but the wind is at our backs and our sails are unfurling. You can be a part of this. Your time and donations can now accomplish far more than they did 20 years ago. I implore you to be a part of this work. You can bend the arc of history. You will change the world, and you will live a meaningful life alongside some of the best, most dedicated individuals who have ever lived. Thank you so much.